It was Halloween, and Nathan was at home watching the movement on the street. He was relaxed, with no expectations for anything special that night. But at the sound of a knock on the door, he stood up, ready to hand out candy. When he opened the door, he was met with the unexpected. A young man with a mischievous smile, dressed provocatively as a devil. He wore red horns, a fabric tail, and a cape that barely covered his back. His body was athletic, each movement revealing defined muscles under the tight costume. Nathan's eyes were drawn to the young man's silhouette, fascinated by his build and the confidence he exuded. His arms were strong, his shoulders broad, and his abdomen, partially visible through the tight outfit, was well defined. Nathan, who had always been reserved, felt an unusual wave of excitement at meeting the young man's gaze. Without words, only silence and the electricity between them spoke more than any dialogue could. "Trick or treat?" the young man asked, his tone playful and challenging, his voice soft but tinged with provocation. Nathan smiled, trying to maintain his composure, but couldn't hide the attraction he felt for this unexpected visitor. He offered him a candy, but knew that night promised more than the usual. For a few seconds, the young man stood there, making no move to leave. Nathan, unsure of exactly what to say, allowed himself to continue admiring the body before him. The young man noticed and gave him a discreet smile, one that conveyed a silent invitation. The tension between them grew, and Nathan felt that this would be no ordinary Halloween visit. The young man took a step forward, closing the distance between them. Nathan didn't resist and opened the door a little wider, his heart racing as he invited him inside. Once inside the living room, Nathan attempted to start a light conversation, but each word seemed only to heighten the attraction hanging in the air. He asked about the choice of costume, and the young man explained with a twinkle in his eye that he enjoyed playing with danger. By this time, Nathan was completely drawn in by the charm of his visitor. The young man sat on the couch, relaxed as he glanced around Nathan's home. Every movement made his costume adjust in a way that highlighted his athletic frame. His strong legs, muscular arms, and the sly smile at the corner of his mouth made him all the more irresistible. Nathan felt as if he were hypnotized. He'd never experienced such an instant, irresistible attraction. He tried to look away, but his gaze kept returning to the young man, who seemed fully aware of the effect he was having. Their conversation drifted in and out, but something almost surreal hung in the interaction. The young man had a unique way of capturing Nathan's attention, making every word sound like a veiled promise. Finally, in a moment of impulse, Nathan moved closer, sitting beside the young man on the couch. They exchanged glances, and without needing words, both knew there was an undeniable connection between them. Nathan, still a bit hesitant, leaned forward slowly, placing a hand on the young man's shoulder, who looked at him with an approving smile. It was as if the touch was an invitation to something beyond, something intense and genuine, even if only for a moment. Their breathing intensified, and the air between them was palpable. The young man seemed to enjoy Nathan's touch and allowed himself to relax, trusting in that moment as if he knew that night would be special. Nathan felt a rush of warmth through his body as their proximity grew. He looked at the young man, now completely at ease, his gaze fixed on him. The young man's eyes were filled with curiosity and attraction, as though he were studying every detail of Nathan with an almost magical intensity. The young devil touched Nathan's chest, slowly exploring each well-defined muscle. Nathan closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the touch, wishing that moment could last forever. The young man's skin was warm, and the contact awakened something long dormant in Nathan. Without a word, the young man moved closer, subtly and provocatively, as if each movement was rehearsed to build even more anticipation. Nathan noticed the young man was mysterious, yet carried an energy that was genuine and spontaneous, which captivated him deeply. The room seemed to be charged with desire, and both knew they were about to cross a line. Neither spoke. Their looks and touches were enough to communicate everything they felt. With a slight smile, the young man leaned in, leaving his lips just inches from Nathan's. He waited, as if giving Nathan the chance to pull back, but Nathan didn't want to stop. He desired that moment with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. When their lips finally met, it was as if time had stopped. Nathan held the young man's face firmly, exploring every detail of that kiss. There was a mix of gentleness and intensity that made him forget everything around them. The young man returned the kiss with equal passion, sliding his hands over Nathan's shoulders and pulling him closer. The heat between them grew with every second, and Nathan found himself more and more lost in that inexplicable connection. In an act of surrender, they both fell onto the couch, caught up in the intensity of the moment. Nathan watched every detail of the young devil, his strong arms, his firm chest, and the toned abdomen that his costume revealed. Every curve, every line seemed carefully drawn, stirring in Nathan a deep admiration. The silence that had previously filled the room was now replaced by whispers and shallow breaths. Nathan knew this night was unique, and as much as he tried, he couldn't imagine what he would do once it was over. The young man stayed close, as if he too was savoring every second. In his eyes, there was something beyond seduction, perhaps a hint of nostalgia, as if he knew that this night would remain an eternal memory. The intensity between them was something Nathan couldn't explain. He felt a blend of physical attraction and an emotional affinity that surprised him. While they were together, Nathan allowed himself to dive into that connection without fear of judgment or regret. The young devil seemed to understand Nathan's feelings, for he too gave himself completely. They exchanged looks, touches, and kisses as if time had stopped. There was a lightness that night, a freedom they both experienced as if there were no tomorrow. For a moment, Nathan forgot his routine, his life. He was completely immersed in that instant with a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He felt as if he had found someone who understood him in a rare, genuine way. The two remained together, sharing that moment of vulnerability and passion. The young devil, with his mysterious and captivating presence, made the night unforgettable for Nathan, who already knew he would treasure those memories forever. They remained silent, each understanding that the magic was in the details, in the intimacy they had built during that magical Halloween night. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, the atmosphere in the house began to change. Nathan felt reality creeping into the moment, reminding him that their time together was running out. He looked at the young man still beside him, eyes a bit tired but filled with tenderness. Although he wished time could stop, he knew this was only a fleeting illusion. The young devil, as mysterious and fascinating as he seemed at the beginning of the night, looked at him with a sad smile, perhaps knowing that he, too, was about to leave. Nathan couldn't hide the ache in his heart. He felt a mixture of wanting to prolong the moment and the weight of an inevitable farewell. He tried to start a conversation, perhaps to keep the young man around a little longer, but neither could find the right words. There was a mutual, silent understanding that, although this night had been magical, it was destined to end. In a sudden impulse, Nathan reached out, holding the young man's hand tightly, as if, somehow, he could prevent him from leaving. The young man's skin was warm and soft, and that touch was an anchor that kept him there, even if just for a few more moments. The young devil returned the squeeze with a faint smile, but his gaze revealed something deep and sad. He seemed equally torn, as if part of him wanted to stay by Nathan's side forever, while another part understood they belonged to different worlds. When he finally let go of the young man's hand, Nathan felt as if he was letting a part of himself slip away with him. It was a silent pain, a wound he knew would take time to heal. They embraced in silence, and the touch felt more intimate than any words could be. The young man rested his head on Nathan's shoulder, both absorbing the melancholy of the moment. Finally, the young man moved toward the door, taking a step away. Nathan followed him with his eyes, imprinting every detail in his mind, knowing that once he crossed that threshold, all that would remain was a memory. The young devil looked back one last time, his gaze full of a restrained sadness. And in that moment, Nathan knew that memory would be his most bittersweet and precious one. As soon as the door closed behind the young man, an immense silence fell over the house. Nathan stood there, frozen, his hand still hovering near the doorknob as if his body refused to accept the finality of the moment. He could still feel the warmth of the young man's presence, his laughter echoing softly, his scent lingering like a phantom. For several minutes, Nathan couldn't bring himself to move, hoping against hope that maybe the young man would come back, that he'd knock one more time, perhaps with one last mischievous smile, breaking the heaviness that had settled in Nathan's heart. Eventually, Nathan turned away from the door and wandered through the house, each room holding a memory of the night before. The couch still bore the faintest impression of where the young man had sat, his laughter and gentle voice etched into the air. Nathan sat down, closing his eyes as he retraced every touch, every glance. He could almost feel the young man's hand in his, the warmth that had felt so familiar despite their brief encounter. He leaned back, sinking deeper into the memories, as if reliving them could bring the young man back for just a moment longer. As the morning light grew stronger, the reality of the young man's absence became more palpable. Nathan felt the weight of the solitude around him pressing on his chest with each quiet breath. He had known loneliness before, but never like this. This was a void that felt personal, as though a part of him had been taken. He thought of reaching out, of somehow finding the young man, but he knew it was futile. They had shared a fleeting, beautiful night, a moment of pure connection, destined to exist only in his memory. Hours passed, but Nathan couldn't bring himself to leave the room. The house felt colder now, emptier, each corner a reminder of the warmth he had briefly held. He walked through the hallway, brushing his fingers along the walls, feeling the silence that now seemed to have a life of its own. He realized that he had no keepsake, nothing physical to prove the young man had ever been there, only the vivid images imprinted in his mind. Later that evening, as darkness crept in once more, Nathan sat alone by the window, staring out at the street where he had first seen the young man in his devilish costume. In that darkness, he could almost see him again, standing there, with that teasing smile and the glint of something unspoken in his eyes. The shadows played tricks, and Nathan found himself reaching out, only to grasp the empty air. The sadness settled in fully now, thick and unmoving, as he finally allowed himself to accept that the young man was gone, leaving nothing but silence in his wake. In the days that followed, Nathan struggled to resume his routine. Each morning he would rise, dress, and begin his day, yet everything felt hollow. It was as if the world had lost its color, each familiar detail now tinged with the absence of something precious. He carried on with the motions, but every step felt heavier, haunted by the memory of that one unforgettable night. Each Halloween brought the memory flooding back with new intensity, a bittersweet reminder of the joy and the ache that had become part of his soul. He found himself glancing at the door more often, a habit he couldn't shake, as if some part of him still hoped that the young man might appear once more. It was foolish, he knew. Their paths had crossed like a comet streaking across the night sky, brilliant, beautiful, and destined to vanish. Yet the longing remained, a quiet ache that grew with each passing year. He never spoke of it, never told a soul, for the memory was something he held close, a private reminder of a love that existed outside time and reality. Years went by, and Nathan held on to that memory, preserving it as one would a fragile relic. The young man's smile, his laughter, and the warmth of his touch remained vivid in Nathan's mind, refusing to fade. Even in moments of joy, there was always an underlying sorrow, a reminder of that Halloween night that had come and gone like a dream. He would light a candle every year on that date, placing it near the door as a silent tribute, a small ritual he kept to honor what they had shared. Sometimes he wondered what had become of the young man. Had he remembered their night together, or had he moved on, leaving that memory behind? Nathan imagined that the young man had gone on to new adventures, new moments, perhaps never thinking of him again. And yet, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that their souls had connected in a way that defied explanation. That night had left him changed, and he couldn't help but wonder if it had done the same for the young man. As the candle burned down each year, Nathan would sit by the window, gazing into the darkness, hoping for a glimpse of that devilish smile, a shadow of the young man he would never forget. The memory had become a part of him, a ghostly companion that would walk with him for the rest of his days, filling him with a sadness that was somehow beautiful, a reminder that love, no matter how brief, had the power to leave an indelible mark. With each passing year, Nathan's life grew quieter, as did the world around him. He spent more time in the shadows of his memories, retreating into the quiet places where he could be alone with his thoughts, his remembrance of the young man who had come and gone so quickly. His once lively home became filled with an almost sacred silence, as though preserving the sanctity of that fleeting night. In the stillness, he could almost hear the young man's laughter, a sound that had woven itself into the fabric of his soul. As Nathan grew older, he came to accept that some love stories weren't meant to be written, but were instead meant to exist only in fleeting moments, in memories, and in the heart. He had carried this love, this memory, like a hidden treasure, a reminder that even the briefest encounters could hold a lifetime of meaning. He would walk through his home, touching the places they had shared, each step heavy with the realization that what he held on to was both his greatest joy and his greatest sorrow. One Halloween night, many years after their encounter, Nathan felt the weight of the years pressing down on him. His movements were slower, his breath a bit shorter, yet his heart remained filled with the same intensity whenever he thought of the young man. He prepared the candle as he had every year, lighting it and placing it by the door. But this time, he lingered a little longer, feeling a strange calm settle over him. Sitting down beside the candle, he looked out into the night, his mind drifting back to that one magical evening. As the candle burned lower, Nathan closed his eyes, letting the memories envelop him completely. He saw the young man's face clearly, the mischievous glint in his eye, the warmth of his smile. He imagined them together once more, sharing one final moment, a last goodbye that he had never truly given. In the stillness, he allowed himself to release the grief, to embrace the peace that came with knowing he had loved deeply, even if only for a night. When the candle finally flickered out, Nathan felt a lightness he hadn't known in years. He whispered a quiet goodbye, a farewell he had been carrying in his heart all along. The room was dark, but Nathan felt a warmth surrounding him, a feeling of closeness, as if the young man's spirit was there with him one last time. A soft smile crossed his lips as he took one final peaceful breath, his heart at last at rest, forever intertwined with the memory of a love that had haunted him and healed him all at once.